Hey everyone, welcome to this episode of the Darksliders podcast with Doug and Brad.
Hi.
Uh, like normal, we'll be going through some games that we've been playing lately, some games that are coming up, and some of the news that came out this past week. So Doug has some big news that he's really excited about and only really applies to him, but Doug had some really good things happen to him this week. So Doug, what happened?
I got a job, and then I got a paycheck, and then I got a PS4.
So the last one is the one that we're going to talk about, because that's the important one.
Yeah. Yes, the most important thing in my life that's happening right now is I got a PS4.
So you had very little time with the PS4 before this, right? Like maybe a couple hours.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much actually the only time I ever played a PS4 was whenever I was at your house, whenever we meet. So yeah, I guess total time I had on the PS4 was like maybe 5 hours at most. At most.
All right, so getting into this, what were some of your thoughts about the PS4 kind of in general here?
It's really, really slick. When I first beat, because I've been with the PS3 for, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 years. So since I hadn't really got my hands on a PS4, I didn't really get to look at the menu system and stuff like that. There's a lot of little details that just make the experience so much smoother than PS3. One of the things I really really liked was when I first booted up my PS4. I've had PS Plus for about 6 months, so I had like literally over 20 games that I could start playing immediately just from PS Plus, which is really cool and not really related to PS4 itself, but people,
Just yeah,
yeah.
it's kind of cool that you can just do that, even though you've never touched this thing, and you get that whole backlog instantly.
Yeah, people, seriously, if you have a PS Plus subscription and you don't have one of the consoles, go online and quote unquote buy and register those games because I've been doing that for like 6 months and I already have like 20 PS4 games. Besides that, though, so well, my first thing to do, right, why I mentioned that is because as soon as I started, I just downloaded all the games I wanted to play immediately. And then I put in Bloodborne and started playing that. But we'll get to Bloodborne in a second because I'm not going to shut up about Bloodborne. But what I noticed, like while I was playing Bloodborne, like it was downloading in the background and then installing without it ever affecting my game, which is a huge problem on PS3 because anytime you wanted to download something like a patch, you just have to wait for I don't know, 20 minutes, and you couldn't do anything else with your PS3 at all,
Yeah,
which is
with
so frustrating.
yeah, the PS4 just kind of cuts out the online features for that time while it's downloading until you update. And then you can go, and then you can get those online features back as soon as that update's downloaded. But you can still play the game as much as you want, which is a really cool feature.
Yeah. And like any other games you're downloading in the background, like they'll download and they'll install without you even noticing. Like I was just playing this little notification. It was like, so and so was downloaded. So and so was installed. I was like, oh, wow, I didn't. Because what was the last game I was playing was like Yakuza 4 on PS3. And that took an ungodly amount of time to install, like a half hour in which
That
my
game
PS3
is
was.
ridiculously big.
Oh, yeah. I felt bad deleting it, but I was like, oh, I have so much free space on my PS3 now. But it kind of alleviates that. So I like that I'm never going to have to worry about, oh crap, I want to play my PS3 and now I got to wait for this update to install. It's like, no, I can just play my game and then it'll update and install in the background.
I think the system updates you do have to wait for.
Yeah,
Like if there's a system
yeah,
update, you
that's
have
true.
to sit there and watch those menus. But for individual game updates, it is nice to have them.
Yeah, that's true. It didn't take that long to install whatever system update it needed, though. I mean, they're not like multiple gig. Oh yeah, that was one thing I did not expect is the PS4 game like updates for games are shoot 2 gigs, 4 gigs, something
Giant.
crazy. So I can kind of understand why they were doing this is because the update size was so huge. What else? I like that the overall design is much slicker. It's a lot less confusing. I don't know what they did, but they kind of burned out a lot of the menu stuff that you didn't need. Just so like everything is now in settings that you would ever need in settings. It was really cumbersome on PS3 trying to figure out what the heck you were doing. And this is kind of a cool thing. This is just added recently, like within the past week. This cool thing for accessibility. It just says accessibility in your system in your settings, which doesn't really mean anything to most listeners. But what Sony did is because they've been getting a lot, not of complaints, but there's a large physically and visually handicapped group of people who they one of the things they really really want is the ability to change the button configurations on their controllers because sometimes they'll have specialized controllers that don't quite match up with like a normal PS4 controller. So they want to have the option to be able to sit there and modify their settings. And now they let you do that. And then they added a bunch of stuff with like large text or color gradient changes if you're colorblind. It was actually really cool of them to do that.
That's
And
very awesome.
yeah, probably could have done that like I don't know, 5 years ago on the PS3, but I'm kind of glad they're like listening and it's just easier to do stuff with that.
Yeah, I feel like that's not a huge thing, but definitely
Mm-hmm.
affects a good number of people that are probably trying to play these games.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's kind of cool. So I'm man, I'm gonna try to avoid talking about Bloodborne, so I'm gonna talk about Infamous first. Because I haven't had a lot of time with the PS4. I finally got that next gen shock of, oh my god, these games are amazing looking. Which is, I guess I was expecting it, but I don't know why people are saying it's like, oh, it's such a small jump from PS3 to PS4. I can tell you, I've been playing PS3 for, I don't know, a long time, like waiting to get a PS4. And the PS4 games look way, way, way better. It's not even, they run
Oh,
better, they
absolutely.
look better, everything about them. I don't think, people keep saying it's a small jump. It's not even close. Go back and play some of your older PS3 games and tell me it's a small jump.
Well, I think the big thing is like if you look at the jump from PS2 to PS3. I mean, I think that was a much bigger change. This one definitely is there, and I think it's noticeable. But I think if you compare the jump from Super Nintendo to Nintendo 64, the Nintendo
Yeah.
64 PlayStation era to PlayStation, I think those were bigger jumps. This one is just a more polished feel, I think.
Yeah, I'll agree with that, but I think that we're kind of at the point where, I mean, considering how good the character models were in The Last of Us, I mean, at what point, how much better can they look? Like
Very true.
you can look at CG films and like, oh, those look really good. On a technical level, they're definitely more impressive than a Last of Us model. But just from, if you don't, like, most people don't really know the technical know-how of like of image quality, like movie quality, image quality, and animation and stuff like that, it still looks really good. So that jumps could be smaller just because it was so good. Look, the character models stuff were so good looking on PS3 that you couldn't really go too much higher without ungodly amounts of extra processing power and stuff like that. But either way, I was impressed as hell. Infamous, I didn't. I actually kind of want to get Infamous Second Son, so I was kind of wary about playing First Light because I was worried about spoilers. Oh my god, that game is so pretty. Actually, yeah, that game is. I don't even know where to start the game. It's really fun and it's really really gorgeous. That was one of the first jaw dropping. Yeah, I mean I had been playing Bloodborne for a bit, but Infamous was the game that made me go, whoa, this is crazy.
Well,
Because
Infamous is different just because like the color palette. I mean, there's
that's
actually
true.
more to it. Bloodborne is just it's such a dark game that you don't even necessarily notice them. I mean, you notice like the sweeping landscapes and you notice
Hmm.
like the draw distance and how far out everything and all that kind of stuff. But Infamous actually has just really good set design and color and you really get this like full world feel from it, I feel like. Not that Bloodborne doesn't, but it's just easier to picture in Infamous because of the color and just the way things are laid out in there.
Yeah, that's true. Especially with like the particle effects. The particle effects are
Yeah.
freaking bonkers. Like that. That's like definitely the next gen thing. Was because when I was running around with her, she leaves a trail, and I was like, oh, okay, that's kind of cool when I'm running around. And then I stopped and I turned around and noticed like, oh, the trail still stays there, and then kind of fades away.
Yep.
Or when you're jumping or shooting, like all the particles go everywhere, and it's just really, really. Oh my gosh, that was gorgeous. Really fun game, really relaxing because Bloodborne. Okay, we're gonna start talking about Bloodborne.
See, that's interesting to me that you liked Infamous First Light so much because I didn't care for it, and I think you hadn't really played Second Son because my issue with
Yeah,
First Light
no.
is it just seemed like such a clipped down version of Second Son because it's one power set, kind of a smaller area. Like a lot of the grand pieces of Infamous Second Son are kind of stripped away, and it's just this kind of bare bones, one power, small districts of the city, not as much to do, little pieces. So it's interesting because I didn't care for it nearly as much as you did.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's kind of, yeah, like you said, it's kind of my first impression of Infamous. Like right now, it was the perfect commercial to get Infamous Second Son. I must be a little bit more than halfway done with it. I feel like it's kind of coming towards the end, and all I can think of is like, oh my god, I want to play more of this, or I want to get Infamous Second Son. They put it on PS Plus is almost like a demo for Second Son
It
because
functions really well as that, I think.
yeah, and so I mean, I definitely enjoyed my time with it. I could see though if you're used to Infamous where you have like 3 or 4 powers and it cuts all those down, that would be kind of frustrating.
Yeah. Granted, it does give you the good one, or the best one,
Yeah,
in my opinion.
yeah.
That was the one I used the most, so at least they stuck with that.
That's what I'm kind of worried about. Like, I feel like that neon power is definitely gonna be more pared down in Infamous Second Son than whatever they gave you in First Light because it's like you move at like ridiculous speeds. Like all I did was like the first thing I did was just upgrade all my movement, so I could just fly around the city as fast as possible. And I was like, I don't think you're gonna be able to do this in Infamous Second Son.
I think you can do that in Second Son. I think you don't quite get as wide variety of powers, but for the most part, like the movement doesn't change at all. The movement's exactly the same.
Oh, really? Okay, then I'm excited because that was, oh my gosh, that moves so well. Yeah, and I really like the style of it too because they had this semi-annoying semi-annoying mini game where you had to graffiti stuff and you had to like move the controller around. And for whatever reason, that didn't feel right. I don't know what I was supposed to do.
They have the same thing in Second Son, but you have to spray paint a wall. And it's kind of the same feeling. So I think it was more of just that, okay, we had this mechanic already set up, so we're just going to port that over too.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't feel right. Initially, like in Second Son, it tells you, okay, hold your controller vertically like a spray paint can with your index finger on the trigger on the, what would that be, R2 button to spray paint it, so you're holding it like a can.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
Which is neat the first time, and then you realize, oh, this doesn't really work too well because I have no indication of where I'm actually starting from.
Oh, that's kind of annoying. Yeah, it was super wonky, but that wasn't what I want to talk about because that was just kind of it just wasn't very good. But what she draws and sketches is so cool.
It's really cool.
Oh my gosh, it's just like a little. It just looks like something somebody made out of a sketchbook and then retraced in neon. It just looks gorgeous. That was some of the first times I was like, whoa, that is just. That was like one of the jaw-dropping things. So I thought, because I realized I'd never seen kind of that kind of art in a video game before, this sort of like graphic design style.
Yeah.
And they sort of show like hints of it throughout the game, and I really, really like that.
Mm-hmm.
But now we're dancing around the topic because I want to talk about Bloodborne.
Let's talk about Bloodborne. Go ahead, talk about Bloodborne.
I'm going to try to keep it short. Bloodborne is definitely one of the best games I've ever played. And I had what essentially is a 3-day weekend, and I played that game for 15 hours, which is something I have not done since maybe high school, because it is stupid and irresponsible, and nobody should be playing that many hours of video games for as long as I did. But that game is just one of the best games I ever played in my life, and I don't know if I should say anything else about it. Because I feel like everybody's sort of gushing about that game. I don't even know where to start. Okay, I do want to start with one thing. The thing I like the most about that game is that you always feel like there's always something more to explore. And I love exploration in games, and that game, bar none, has the best exploration in any game I've ever seen. It has the best rewards for exploration, which is shortcuts. I'm going to talk about that. I'm not going to talk about Bloodborne. I'm going to talk about the shortcut. I'm going to talk about something very specifically, the shortcut system. So the game kind of feels pretty linear at first. Brett, how far are you? You're like
I'm third boss, I think. Yeah,
third boss. Yeah, I just beat the fifth one in 2 days. But the world feels really small at first. And sometimes you'll feel like you're going through this really, really long gauntlet that just goes on forever, and you're like, oh my god, I'm just never going to get to a save again. And suddenly you'll open up some sort of gate. And that gate takes you way, way back to another area that you didn't think you were at. And now you have like a shortcut to the area you were just exploring. So now you have sort of like this new safe zone in which to start exploring from again. So it doesn't feel as stressful. Like as soon as you find those shortcuts, it's such a sense of relief when you find those. And I love that.
See, I'm different. Because I agree that it's a sense of relief. And again, I'm not quite... I've had the game for 3 weeks. I'm not even as far as you are, but that's kind of where I'm at with that game. But anyway, I get irritated because I go, okay, I just sat here for a half hour, am stressed as hell, trying to figure out where the hell I'm going, and I'm right back where I started at. I made no progress except for the fact that I went around and I took the back way. It's like, instead of taking the highway, I took the side roads around, and now I'm back at home. I didn't actually get to where I want to be.
Well, but what it is like basically like that time you spent like working around, like you collect a bunch of souls, and now you can go dump your souls, and then you can go back and re-explore because.
But I didn't make any progress. I didn't do anything.
What do you mean?
I just walked around for an hour.
No, oh my god, are you kidding me? You played Bloodborne. What? What do you mean? You saw a new exciting enemy. You got a new item. You uncovered the mystery of
the path. Why can't all this be on the path to where I want to go? I understand the idea of an open world game, but I like the idea of having a destination in mind, and in that game you don't, and you end up just back where you started. You just go, okay, I went to the right, and I went down this path, and I went up these stairs and across this bridge, and oh, now I'm back.
No.
It just feels like I'm getting lost in the woods. Like I should have made a left at that road instead of a right, and then instead of getting on the highway, I should have gone to the next exit. Like that's in my mind what's happening.
No, because what happens is because you didn't make that right, you've made that left, and now you got a shortcut. But now you can go back with more confidence taking that right turn and going back to where you saw before in case you missed something. It basically just gives you shorter distances to get to things, so it isn't as stressful as exploring. Like those areas that you spent like a lot of time like really stressing out to get through. Now because you have a checkpoint that's close by, you can actually sit there and go explore those areas better.
But it's not a new checkpoint. It's the same point. I didn't find a new checkpoint. I'm in the same spot.
No, well, you're not. Oh, this is a weird. No, it's not. It's not the same spot. No. Because
yes, it is. It's exactly the same spot. I just walked in a big circle.
No, I guess I can see where you're coming from, but I don't know. I find that more interesting than frustrating because I like that sort of interconnectivity. It makes it feel more like a world. Like I think that's like a really weird way to do an open world compared to most open worlds. Like you are creating your open world.
I guess that's true, and you're kind of discovering it as you go. But just I don't know. One of my issues with that game, and I still think that's a great game, but I'm taking a break from it. We needed to have some time apart, me and Bloodborne. So
you could just not like Bloodborne. That's okay.
See, but I like it, but and we talked about this a little bit earlier this week when the two of us were talking. That is a game where I want to play it for about 4 hours, and then I want to not even bother thinking about it for 2 weeks, and then I want to play it for 4 hours, and then not think about it for 2 weeks. It's really, really good, and I really like it. It just gets on my nerves because I don't like some of the pieces in it. The overall concept, the overall game itself I like, but I don't like the fact that I never know where I'm going. I'm always stressed out. I always feel like I'm going to lose everything and just be back at the beginning of the game. At any random point, I'm going to be back in the little, like, I don't remember, I think it was like a house you started in. Like, I'm just going to end up back at that house at any moment, and I don't like that feeling.
That's so funny, because actually, those are the things I do like about it. I like that I like that there's no throwaway enemies. I like that I like that I have to think in every encounter. Like I don't like in games where I'm just kind of on autopilot the whole time. It's like, okay, square, triangle. Talking about God of War.
Which is odd because you were talking about how much you love God of War earlier.
I do like God of War. I can like multiple games. But anyway. I just feel... Sorry, continue.
Yeah, I still think it's a great game, and I know that's like your favorite game. I don't know. I keep trying to get into it, and I'll get into it for like 2 hours, and then I'll get really pissed, and then I'll be done with it for a while. So I think I have not even played that game in the past week because I was just, nope, I'm done with you.
Yeah, that game is frustrating. I can definitely see how it gets frustrating, and it gets harder and more intense because, like right now when I first played it, it was just intense. Like just from like we were talking about last time, we were talking about like the failure of losing souls, and they're not even souls or blood somethings. I don't care. We're gonna call them souls.
Blood echoes.
Blood echoes. Yeah. But like not where you are, a little bit past where you are currently. They add this really, really strong horror aspect to it, like really intense horror aspect, like way worse than any horror game I've ever played before. Just the aesthetic, and then like on top of the fact that you're worried about losing those echoes, makes it insanely stressful. And that's why I started playing Infamous because I was like, I can't handle this. I cannot handle being scared, like of the environment and being scared of losing all my blood echoes.
Just too much.
Too much.
All right. So moving away from Bloodborne to a game very similar to Bloodborne, LittleBigPlanet 3.
Yay!
So I spent some time with this. I got this game a while ago, and I played it for a little bit, and just kind of, I don't remember, something else came up or something, so I kind of set it aside and figured, okay, I've got some time, I'll come back to this. Mm-hmm. This is my first time ever playing a LittleBigPlanet game. I never played any of the PS3 ones, never played it on Vita or anything like that, so... It was one of those things where, when it came out, it was one of the few big Sony exclusives, like, last fall, winter time, so I was like, well, I'll buy it and give it a shot. I didn't really care for this.
Aw.
I don't know. I know, Doug, you really like LittleBigPlanet, right?
I really like LittleBigPlanet. And honestly, I think the reason I like LittleBigPlanet actually has nothing to do with LittleBigPlanet, the game itself. I think it's really, really fun to play with. Like, to be clear, I played LittleBigPlanet 2 with my family, and then I played LittleBigPlanet Vita with my girlfriend, like, and like that's how I went through both of the games entirely. Was like with a family member or with my girlfriend, and
Maybe that
so
would have helped.
yeah, and like I I don't know how I would have liked that just sitting by myself because when your little sack boy smiles and you giggle to yourself, it's one thing, but you want to giggle with somebody next to you. You don't just be like, haha, that was cute to yourself. But if you're like, haha, that was cute to somebody else in the room. I realize that the game like has a lot of problems and stuff like that. And sometimes it can be frustrating with like the jumping and things like that. But it's fun to be frustrated and annoyed with something with someone in the room.
See, that's weird because I never really got frustrated with it at all.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
They must have fixed the jumping then.
Yeah, I mean, there were a couple of parts that were kind of wonky. Like the last two levels, like out of nowhere, just become like the most difficult thing you've ever seen.
That's kind of weird.
I think the issue is you get like the game, like the big selling point of this game is it has new characters. You've got like the little thing that runs, you've got the bird, and you've got the big fat guy.
Mm-hmm.
I wish I remember their names, but I don't. I think it was Toggle, Odd Sock, or Odd something like that.
Yeah, that's right.
I don't know, Flappy or no Swoop.
Swoop.
Was the bird. But so they give you these characters, and when you unlock each character, so the progression of the game is you unlock the characters as you go, of course.
Yeah.
And once you unlock the character, you do like a level as them, and then you go back to Sackboy. And then you unlock the next character, you get a level as that character. So you've only played with these characters one time, and then you get to the last couple levels, and you're basically rotating through all the characters kind of in and out for these last two really difficult levels. So you have
just for the last two levels?
Yeah.
That's insane.
I don't know at what point you were supposed to kind of master the ability to use these characters to the point where, like, you get those, like, platforming scenes where it's like, okay, I got to jump really quick, or I've got to, like, perfectly navigate this little part. And you're doing it with characters that you've never really used before, with the exception of maybe a level or two.
That's so weird. I thought because from what I'd seen, because I played, like I said, I played LittleBigPlanet 2 and Vita. I kind of assumed that you'd be switching like through the three characters like constantly throughout the game, but you really only get like one or two levels with them.
Yeah. So the way it goes is, and again, I don't really think there's not a story to spoil, so I don't. But anyway, the way it goes is there's like the intro level. After you beat the intro level, you go to World 1, I don't remember the fancy name for it.
Yeah.
And you have to collect 3 marbles as Sackboy. And when you collect the 3 marbles, that, I think it's resurrects or unlocks Oddsock, I think is the first one.
Yeah.
Well, then you play a level as Oddsock.
Okay.
And then you have to beat a boss, and then you go to World 2 and you start over as Sackboy, collect your 3 marbles, unlock Toggle. Play a level as Toggle, beat a boss, back to Sackboy, collect 3 marbles.
That's so weird. Oh my god.
And then after you unlock all 3, then it's, okay, now we'll let you use all these, but this is the last level. Or the last 2 levels. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense to me.
I totally thought, I thought the whole game was like, once you collect a character, like you play as that character and Sackboy, like, and then you get the next one. So it's like you now play as 3 characters, then it's 4 characters. Wow, that's...
Well, you can switch in and out as the one in like the hub world, and maybe I did this really wrong, but there's no... I never found a way to actually switch in and out of characters inside an actual level.
Oh, that's weird and garbagey.
Yeah. So it's like the big selling point of this game is we have new characters now, but we're going to kind of hide them behind this door that you can't unlock.
Would you have liked the game more if they had done that?
I think so, because once you do get the characters, it adds a variety, because like Oddsock, you're able to run up walls, and he runs faster, and he can jump bigger distances. Toggle he's like the big fat guy, he can break through stuff, but then he can shrink down. Then he's this little dude, and he runs fast and goes through like the different like cracks and everything.
Yeah.
So they each have an interesting mechanic to them, but it's just you don't really get the chance to use that mechanic at all.
Oh, that's kind of annoying.
But yeah, I don't know. So maybe I would have liked it more of that, but just I don't know. It just felt like a very, very bland platformer to me. Like Rayman, Mario, all those other games, Ratchet and Clank, Jak and Daxter, Crash Bandicoot, they all have their certain feeling to it. Yeah. This is just, you're this little, kind of whatever you want it to be guy, and you're just kind of going through this world.
I could see that. I think if you don't like buy into the concept initially, then it's just not going to click like the whole time. Because I think it is pretty unique. I think that just because the game doesn't have a certain tightness to it, and the game aesthetic is literally like junk kind of thrown together, and that's sort of the idea of it's like a kid's what a construction paper project or something like that, or not tearaway. That's tearaway, but you know what I mean. That's sort of like
yeah, but it's got that just kind of okay. We just threw this all together at once, and I mean it does have a story, and the story is about this guy trying to steal the creativity from the world or something like that.
Yeah.
Which I don't know. It's just compared to a more traditional platformer, it just doesn't really seem like it has that
it factor.
That it factor, that its own feeling, its own vibe to it. This is kind of just, we threw this together. Here you go.
Yeah, I think that if they actually had a tighter art style, because I think it looks good a lot of the times, but sometimes it just looks too messy, and it's really hard. It's hard to like something in that game besides even Sackboy's changing. There's something really hard. There's not like an iconic thing to grab onto in that game.
Yeah.
Like you would think Mario, and because the aesthetic is so radically different between levels and so radically different between characters and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think you should play. I think you should at least if the Vita one is ever on PS Plus, you should definitely give that one a try, because that game is better than LittleBigPlanet 2. I've heard it's not. It's heard it's better than LittleBigPlanet 3. You should try that one, and then maybe we'll talk about that one later.
Yeah, we might have to do that. Alright, so the last game we want to talk about here, and I finished this game this week and really liked it, and Doug, I know you just kind of got started with it more or less, but
yeah.
Never Alone was one of the PS Plus games this month.
Mm-hmm.
Really interesting concept for a game, and has a lot of kind of unique pieces to it, and what's interesting is the time that we spent with it. We did very different things with this game.
Yeah.
So if you're unfamiliar with this, it's kind of based on some Alaskan Inuit fairy tales.
Yeah, they weren't. One sec. They weren't Inuit. They were something different, but it was sort of that same group. They said it a few times. I was like, I should have wrote this down. They were not Inuit, though. They were a tribe that was similar to Inuits. It doesn't matter, just because I kept saying Inuit last time.
It doesn't matter?
No. Well, you would have known that had you watched the documentaries.
So, that's getting into what I want to talk about. So this game, there's the game part, and the game, it's a short game. It's an indie platform puzzle-solving game. So it's pretty short. But to go along with this, they actually film these documentaries, which are these people from this culture talking about the stories and going through all the different pieces of it. So I sat down, I played through the whole game. When I unlocked one, I clicked the button, clicked play, clicked stop. So I got credit because there's a trophy that if you watch all of them, and I figured if I just watch 2 seconds
filthy.
of them,
that's so filthy.
I'll get my trophy.
That's filthy.
Anyway, you took the other approach where you didn't really... I don't think you even played too much of the game. You just sat down and watched the documentary.
Yeah, I thought the game itself was like, it was kind of nice to look at. I thought the animations were a little wonky. I didn't think the puzzles like weren't hard. Like they were like literally like straight up push the block puzzles. I mean, I'm only halfway through the game, so let's be clear.
I will say that as you go through it, it does get a little bit more involved. For the most part, it's a lot of push the block this way, pull this way, move this here. There's not a whole lot to it. Eventually, you get something that you can throw at things that kind of creates.
I mean, I got that. Like, I think from a pure gameplay perspective, I'd seen it before. The aesthetic itself was actually kind of cool because I like that like kind of windswept tundra, and I like the character designs were really, really, really good. I like the character designs a lot in that game. But yeah, I thought the gameplay was just okay. So every time a little documentary, I love documentaries. So anytime a little documentary thing popped up, I'd watch the documentary. So I watched all of them up to the point where I am, and they're really, really well done. Like, I watch a lot of documentaries, and these are like very professionally, surprisingly well done documentaries for what is it, a video game. I wasn't expecting that at all. You get to learn a lot. Like, every little item you picked up, like if you picked up like one of the characters, there's a guy you meet later, sort of like shaman guy, and he needs a drum. So they'll tell you about that type of shaman guy, like in their culture. And then when you find it, and then you go down and like these little people stole the drum. So you learn about the little people in that culture. And then when you get the drum, they teach you. Then they have a little documentary about the drum itself. I don't know. I thought it was really cool. It was like playing a net. It was kind of like National Geographic should get on the shit immediately.
Oh,
because if like I would love to play more games that were kind of like educational as you went along. There actually is another game that's kind of like this called Africa that came out on PS3 that was actually sponsored by National Geographic. And it was like an African safari taking pictures game, but you learned a lot about camera work, and you learned a lot about the animals and stuff there too. So
educational Pokemon Snap.
No, exactly. Actually, exactly. It really was. And it was like, oh, that's so cool. So yeah, I really like that aspect of the game. I thought the game itself was like Okay. The one thing I did not like though is because I was watching documentaries, it really chopped up the seamlessness of the game. Because
Oh, I didn't think about that.
yeah, so for like what I could tell is like what I liked is like as you're walking along, like he's telling a story. So I
Yeah.
imagine if you played this thing continuously, like it would be like one long tale. Um,
Yeah, and that's exactly what it is. Is it starts out, and as you move from place to place, you get like a short little cutscene, and just it's narrated over. So it flows like you just are sitting down with this guy who's telling you this 3 hour long story.
yeah. Oh, something that's really cool about that. So you're kind of like moving. You're moving from left to right the whole time in basically a straight line. So I actually watched one of the documentaries, and the way that they tell stories is that they carve onto like pieces of ivory their story onto like long pieces of ivory. So you actually like tell the story like as you're reading it along. So the
Oh,
whole
that's cool.
game is set up as one of these as one of these like ivory stories that's being read. I
That's
re-
really cool.
yeah, and you would have known that have you seen the documentaries?
Oops. Well, I considered like see part of what I thought was maybe if I go back through, and my thought was if I play through the whole game, then I'll unlock the whole documentary, and I can just sit down and watch the whole documentary at the end, which I probably will never do. But that was my thinking.
God dang it, Brad! You need like that's the one like thing I find super unique about this game is the documentary. You're like, whatever.
No, see, I find it super unique. I'm just not that interested.
Just watch one, at least one,
I
and then
think
maybe
I
two
will say
or
I think
three.
I think I watched like half of one, or I watched one because there was like one piece where, like you said, it interacts well with the world, and you get to this one thing, and I don't necessarily remember the specific thing of what it was, but it was towards the later stage of the game. It's like that's kind of a weird thing. I've never seen anything like that before. And then like right as I got to a documentary popped up, so I was like, oh, well there we go, and then it explained it to me. And I do like the idea of like having the documentary there because this is a story that like I personally have never heard before, and
Yeah,
if you think about modern like media, video games, movies, everything, it's all kind of goes back to kind of the same basic European style fairy tale type stuff. This is
yeah.
something from a completely different culture that's like, okay, we haven't ever used anything from this culture, so even some of the terms, some of the items that we're talking about are things that you never even see. Like at one point,
Hmm.
they start using a weird word, and the word is basically just the word from this culture for pickaxe.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
And you're
Yeah,
like,
I like that things weren't just like drums or like, hey, I need my, I don't, or I need this weapon. They'd say like whatever the thing was,
yeah.
and then you'd have to go in the documentary like understand what it was. So it kind of
Mhm.
was like this unfiltered story that this guy is telling, and then it's kind of like, what do you call that? Like when you're reading like Shakespeare, it has a little note.
Annotations.
Yeah, it's like yeah, exactly. And the documentary is like the annotation is the story being told. So I wish there was a way to kind of balance that a little bit better because every time I unlocked one, I wanted to watch it immediately, but I felt it kind of chopped up um,
The storytelling
the
aspect.
story. Yeah, this actual gameplay. Maybe if they, I don't know, but then I feel like people wouldn't watch them unless you could watch it immediately. I don't know. I think what I've liked to have done was play the whole game through and then done the documentaries.
See,
But
and that's what I said.
no, but you're not actually going to watch documentaries. It's a damn shame because those are amazing. They're so well done. They're professionally done. They're like a standard documentary, really well done. You should watch those. You'll learn
I'll probably
something.
go back and watch a couple of them. Yeah, I'm not super into documentaries unless it's something that's really, really interesting to me. But I actually really thought this game was really solid. There were one or two pieces that kind of got annoying just because we haven't really talked much about the gameplay, but the nature of the gameplay is it's more or less designed as a co-op game,
Yeah,
so you can have two people playing it, but later in the game, so this is a little bit further than you got to, there starts to be some enemies and different things that kind of pop up and some different platforming mechanics, but if your co-op partner dies, which is controlled by
the
just the
AI.
game
Yeah,
itself, if they die, game over.
yeah. I
And
noticed that. Yeah.
there's one particular scene which I don't want to ruin because it's actually a really really cool scene, and I think it's only maybe like 20 minutes past where you are, but
Hmm.
where these like things are kind of floating around, and you have to kind of time it. If they hit you, they take you and kill you. Well, if they
Okay.
hit your partner, they take them and kill them. So you don't have control over them, but they're still walking through, and if they still hit these things,
Yeah. Oh, that's kind of
so
frustrating.
it's
Yeah.
yeah, just
Because
gets
I
a little
noticed
bit
there's like kind
frustrating
of a
for those
lag.
points.
There's like a lag when they follow because they follow like slightly behind you. There's a part where a guy was throwing rocks at me and I dodge it, but I would move like just as it was coming towards me. But then my AI partner had not registered that I had that needs to be like right next to me. So my AI partner got hit. And I was like, oh, that's dumb.
Yeah, and there's a couple of points later in game too where you'll be on kind of a top part. So if you play as the girl and the fox, and the fox will be on the lower part and the girl will be on the top part, and they don't necessarily move in sync. So there's some lag, gotcha. Or like one will be waiting for you to drop a ladder, or one will be... So there's just some lag there where, okay, if something happens to this character that I have no control over, well, you can switch between them instantly, but if I'm not controlling that character right now and something happens to him, then I have to go back a little bit. But that could get a little frustrating.
Mm-hmm.
But overall, I really love this game. I went through and found all the documentary pieces after I finished it. I didn't watch them, but I found all of them, so I have them all.
Just watch, Brad, just watch them. Oh my god, they're so good.
Alright, but great game. So, moving on here to some kind of upcoming games. We got 3 or 4 games we kind of want to talk about here, and this is kind of our news games we want to play, all kind of blended into one because these are all kind of mixed together here. But couple new game announcements here. So, Deus Ex Mankind Divided was announced this week, which is the direct sequel to Human Revolution, which was kind of the not necessarily reboot of the series, but kind of going back to, because the first 2 came out in the early 2000s, and
it's like a reboot / prequel. I mean it was a prequel, but they definitely it was a reboot. They basically took like the Deus Ex formula and then put a modern design to it, which sounds really stupid and dangerous, but it turned out awesome. I like that game a lot.
Really well. I love Human Revolution, so I was really excited for this. So the way this was announced was really weird.
I wanted to talk about that because that was so stupid.
Yeah, it was bad.
So stupid.
So what's your thoughts on this? Why was it so stupid? Because I didn't like it either.
Okay, so from what correct me if I'm wrong. So from what I understand, how they announced this thing was Square Enix said we're gonna have a live stream of something that's gonna be 3 days long, and like, oh shit, maybe it'll be like some.
They said it's going to be a live stream announcing their new game from one of their Western developers.
Oh yeah, that's what it was. Like they basically ruined the surprise. It was either going to be Hitman or Deus Ex.
Yeah, and essentially.
And so, I guess Tomb Raider's already been announced, so it didn't really matter. So like the stream starts and it's just like a guy in a room, and then every 3 hours the community would vote on what would happen, like to the guy in the room. And it was like stupid stuff like, should we play classical music or rock music? It was a guy being like interrogated or something like that. There's this really, really terrible alternate ARG or ARG. Have you heard of those? Like alternate reality games where it's basically like there's ways you can do these things correctly where you send like cryptic messages to fans and stuff like that, and they have to like kind of decode it and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But when Square announced that this is going to be a game from Western Development, everybody already knew it was Deus Ex because like the aesthetic of the room was like very techno-y and things like that. So everybody's just like waiting. It's like, okay, where's Deus Ex? Okay, where's Deus Ex? Okay, where's Deus Ex? And it then actually got leaked early because Game Informer had some sort of exclusive on it.
Yeah, which made no sense to me because I feel like that was like that wasn't even like a leak. It almost seemed like it was pre-planned. Like because I mean it's from Game Informer, who I feel like is not going to
that's true,
leak something. It was posted on their official website if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it was like day 1.5.
Yeah, it wasn't even 2 days into this whole like, oh, we're gonna take 3 days to announce this and build this anticipation of this thing is coming. There's like, oh yeah, by the way, Square, as this game comes out, no, go back to this guy in the room because what's he gonna talk about?
Yeah, I honestly think everybody's like immediately shut down as soon as that announcement came out. Like nobody cared.
I turned it on like right when it started and like watched, like clicked back to it every now and then to see what was happening with it. But as soon as that came out, I was like, oh well, no point in watching this anymore. So even though they kind of really screwed up the announcement, I feel like, and I don't feel like that was a proper way to introduce a new game to
not at all.
all of us, like especially a game that's as big as this. I mean, maybe it's just I've been a fan of the series for a while, but this is a pretty big game to just kind of be announcing in this haphazard kind of way to me. But the trailer that they released actually looks really, really good.
Yeah, I thought it was really cool. I think that they were kind of at a disadvantage because the original Deus Ex CG trailer was so amazing. I don't think it's quite as good as the original one, but it's still a damn good trailer.
Oh yeah.
It looks really cool. The thing I like about Square Enix CG trailers is that they like to put in a lot of gameplay hints in those CG trailers. You don't do a lot of stuff in that CG trailer you can do in game. I thought it was kind of cool that you saw a lot of his. What do they call those? They're not modifications. They're
I think they're augmentations.
yeah, augmentations. You could see him using a lot of augmentations in that trailer. I thought that was really neat that they sort of
Yeah.
showed you all these. They kind of hinted a lot of new gameplay aspects. They kind of hinted at hopefully an extensive melee system because the melee system in the original was kind of crappy. But that trailer was just oh my god, so good.
I mean,
so
and
good.
really, really pretty too. Like, just I mean, obviously it's all CG at this point, but I mean, really, really pretty.
Yeah, I don't know why people knock CG trailers so much.
I love them.
I think people can get mad. I think you're okay with getting mad at like previs trailers, kind of like the original Watch Dogs one where they kind of faked gameplay.
Yeah.
That yeah, sure you can be mad at that, but
As long as you're upfront, this is a CG trailer. I think it's fine.
yeah, and they were very upfront with that. It was so cool. There's actually a really really cool scene that I liked a lot. Somebody I saw on the internet. I saw a GIF of it, and there's a really big guy with that massive mechanical arm thing. And there's a guy bowing down to kiss his hand, and the next scene, like immediately after that, is Jensen like reaching his mechanical hand out to like help somebody. I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. It's this whole like power and what can you do with this power? I don't know. I thought it was really neat.
And
but
are these good or bad? And there's a whole lot of like discussion with that. Yeah, I don't know. I'm really excited for this.
I'm glad it got a sequel. I'm glad it got a sequel.
I mean, I feel like that game did pretty well.
Yeah, but I'm thinking that I think people are starting to notice that gamers. I don't like saying that because people who people who sometimes play video games on their free time. That's
for 15 hours straight on a 3-day weekend.
Okay, I have a problem. That game is good. Anyway, my point is, I think that people are realizing that people like to think because Deus Ex, the original one, was not a shooter. Was something I didn't even realize because I played the original Deus Ex, which was a shooter is not the right word, but you could get away with a lot of shooting in that game.
Mm-hmm.
But in Human Revolution, it was kind of a stealth game mostly.
Yeah.
Which is kind of and there's a lot of like this branching dialogue and things like that. I thought it was a little bit too thinky to be as popular as it was, but people just ate that up. And people are eating up stuff like Bloodborne, and so the fact that this thing got a sequel and the director's cut had just more options instead of like whatever cutting it down and making it simpler, they just added more options to it. I'm really excited for this one, and the fact that they're like going in with the thoughts of this is what we fixed in director's cut, and like that's their starting point. It's gonna be. I'm a little too excited for that game. I hope it doesn't suck.
It won't. I mean, going back through, I've played all. This will be the fourth one. Yeah, fourth one. I've gone back. I've played all of them, and they're all just really good games. They all kind of. I don't know, I feel like if you go back, it kind of almost sets up that idea of like the shooter RPG combo thing if you go back to some of the original ones with some of the different ways that you could spec things out. And
yeah, I'll give you that.
What?
I said I'll give you that one. I would definitely say it at least popularized it with the putting dialogue options and choices in a shooter.
Absolutely. I don't know. I really like the original ones, and this new, I guess it's almost like a new series or rebooted series, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, the first one was great, so I'm really looking forward to this.
I've heard that, from what I understand, is that this one is actually catching up to, if not overlapping, the original Deus Ex.
Yeah, because I think that one was... Because those ones, if I remember correctly, kind of got into this, are the augmentations good, bad, should they be banned, are they okay?
Yeah.
And they got into a lot of that, and that's kind of where this, I feel like, is finally getting to, because the first one was just like, this is a new thing. This one feels like more is, okay, there are people doing really good things with these and people doing really bad things with these.
Yeah, I think the first was just people, like, most people just, like, lived with them, and it wasn't really an issue, but this one is, like, where it's starting to become an issue. So I'm kind of interested in how the timelines are going to overlap, because this is also going to be the rise of, I don't remember what it was, and this is going to be wrong, in the original Deus Ex, but nanomachines, so it's basically, like, augmentations that didn't radically change your body shape.
Yeah.
Because I think that's what JC Denton? That's...
it's been a long time.
Yeah.
We're going back like 15 years.
Yeah. Like his whole point was, like, his whole thing was that he was getting these augmentations, and they were brand new augmentations, so he didn't look so horribly, like, mechanized and things like that. And suddenly people were starting to look down on people who look mechanized. So it's starting to get into that timeline, and I don't know, that's kind of interesting. I'm just excited for this game, just because the original one was way better. Human Revolution was way better than anybody expected. So,
absolutely.
But now that people are expecting this to be good,
that always
there's only disappointment ahead of us.
Yeah. All right, so another game that had a new trailer come out this week is The Witcher 3. So this had a bit of a different trailer as opposed to the CG trailer. This one had, it was about 5 minutes long, and it was just kind of a narrator describing what's going on with this, what can you do, what's going on with this, because this is kind of a departure from the other two Witcher games in that it's open world, it's much more go where you want to, do what you want to. So they had a whole bunch of different explanations on that. So, what are your thoughts with Witcher 3? So, you watched through this whole trailer. What were some of the things that stuck out to you?
I liked the trailer itself. I don't know how I feel about Witcher 3 right now, but I like that sort of we're going to kind of explain to you our world. I think they start off really weird though, because they'll like we're gonna look at really dark things like racism, and then like the next picture is like 3 white people and one has pointy ears, and they're like, "Oh, we hate elves." I was like, It's not racism.
I mean, in a medieval setting, I would say that's racism. You're thinking more of like a cultural racism as opposed to like literally that is a different race you can pick.
yeah. Okay, I guess that's true. I didn't think about that. Yeah, the game looks kind of weird. That trailer honestly did not do a lot for me. Stuff that they've released before has actually done a lot for me on like for getting me excited about this game. You were talking about how you like Never Alone because it had sort of it wasn't a Western fairy tale. It was sort of like this other culture separately, completely. From what I've read about The Witcher 3 is that all of their monsters are based on Polish monster designs, like in a very specific area, to the fact that they actually had to go to like the historical museum and not like rent, but like get the copyright or whatever is on all these different creatures. So a lot of the creature designs for this game that's called The Wild Hunt, in which you're a monster hunter, all these monsters are from like a weird not a weird culture, just Polish culture. From
offending people the right way. Good
job. From Polish culture, like from Polish history and things like that. So that actually has me more interested than literally anything else in this game. I think it looks good, but I got burned twice on this series. Not burned is not the right word, but I was excited to play. I bought Witcher 1, got about 2 hours into that, and I was like, this game's not for me. Then I got Witcher 2, got about 2 hours in that game, and I was like, this game's just not for me. So
that's interesting because I had the same thing. I never played the first one, but the second one I bought, and I got it cheap sometime just because people were talking about it, and I think I got maybe 5 hours, and it was just like, nope, I'm not feeling this. This isn't my type of thing. So
yeah, I don't know. Maybe Witcher 3 will be really cool.
It sounds like they've made enough changes to the formula of it where I'm interested in giving it a shot.
Yeah,
but it's one of those games where I'm not expecting to like it. I'm expecting to go in and go, okay, I'll give it a shot, see how it is. Yeah. I don't know if this is going to be my thing or not. I mean, and again, not to say that The Witcher 1 and 2 are bad games. They're just, and I talked about this kind of with Bloodborne, I don't think it's a game that's my type of game.
Yeah, actually, speaking of Bloodborne, I actually feel kind of bad. No, I promise this is not like totally about Bloodborne. I feel kind of bad for Witcher 3 because I feel like they're kind of trying to attract the same audience that Bloodborne would be, that people who are in Bloodborne would use it. Like, this is a hardcore RPG. It's going to have, it's like very M-rated. It's going to have a lot of mature, like weird decisions in it, and like there's not always a good or right and wrong kind of thing. So I think that they're going to be, when people play this game, they're like, is this going to be as good as Bloodborne is going to be in the back of people's heads? I think it's different enough that I think that people who played Skyrim are expecting Skyrim from this.
Yeah,
when it's way more hardcore.
Sounds like a harder Skyrim.
Yeah, but like way more hardcore too. Because the reason I didn't like The Witcher 2 so much was because I felt the combat felt a little off. But besides that game was way too hardcore for me. Just the amount of stats.
And like everything was based around buffs and that kind of stuff, and just I never felt like I could just walk into a fight and win without thinking my way through it, which sounds like I'm really really dumb. Sorry. But yeah, you can laugh at that. That works. But just as I'm thinking about it, it's just, to me, Skyrim is a game where I can go in and I can know, okay, I can win this fight by just gameplay mechanics, going in and just fighting this monster, whatever. Yeah. Witcher 2, and again, this is 5 hours in, I felt like, okay, I need to find the right potion for my sword, and I need to make sure my stats are here, and just, that's way too much thought for me to want to put into this.
I think there's just too many systems at play. Yeah. I don't know. I think this game, this kind of reminds me of like those really, really complicated RTSs, like the Total War games.
Oh yeah.
and things like that, where it's just like a lot of stats and a lot of pre-planning and things like that, which is fine for people who like those type of games. Um, but I just feel I'm afraid of the time investment in this game. Like they keep pushing of how long this game is. Like I don't know why I that does not have me excited at all. They're like, oh yeah, if you're gonna play like normally, this game could be like 80 plus hours. Like I'm never gonna finish that game.
Yeah, and kind of going along with that, one of the playtesters, they were kind of talking about it, and they said, okay, we tried to speedrun this game, and going down the main story, the optimum path, the best speedrun so far is 25 hours.
That's all the
Which,
patience I have for that game. It's 25 hours.
I was going to say, I've got maybe 25 hours to invest in the story and going through the game just at a normal pace, let alone a speedrun of it.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. It's one of those games where I know it's going to be good. It's just I don't know how I feel about actually going through and playing it.
This game I would actually really like. Excuse me. I'd like to. This is a game that I would really like to rent, just to see if I like it, because I feel like this is one of those games that I think within like 4 or 5 hours you're going to see like, oh yeah, no, this is a really good game, and then I'll buy it later. Like this would be a game that I would invest in and just straight up buy because it's so long if I enjoyed it. Because Bloodborne, I'm already enjoying that. I know I might actually beat that even though it's 30, 40 hours. But I have no idea about The Witcher 3. Just because I didn't like Witcher 1, I didn't like Witcher 2. So this is definitely one of those, maybe red box it, see if I like it, and then go out and buy it or not buy it, depending on.
All right, so keeping up with our theme of new game announcements, this is one that I know neither one of us is excited for, but it's big news, and that is Black Ops 3 was announced.
Oh my god, no way.
Yeah, so I don't really think we have a whole lot to talk about this. I mean, I have never played one of the Black Ops games. Have you?
No, why is this? No, I barely even play Call of Duty. Why is this on our list of things to talk about?
Because it's big news. I mean, we may not like this, but everyone else does. Well, not everyone else, but a lot.
I will talk about. I did like how they announced this game. This I actually can talk about because this is way better than how they announced Deus Ex.
Yes, it was much better.
From what I understand, they updated Black Ops 2.
Yep.
With I don't know what they did exactly, but for whatever
it was like a QR code.
There was a QR code or something. Okay, but they actually did this with Portal and Portal 2. Was in Portal 1 and when Portal 2 was like still being talked about. They released these radios into Portal 1, and when you took them around different places, they play different tunes or Morse code or something like that, and you could figure out that it was all related to that. So I think that's kind of cool. I think like if Deus Ex had not been announced that way, but instead it's like, oh, that's weird. There's a Steam update for Deus Ex 1. I wonder what that's about. And then you click on it, and suddenly there's like a new menu or something like that. I thought that was really neat that they kind of did a stealth release. I think people figured out like immediately though. There was no mystery. Yeah. Although there's not a lot of mystery in like if a new Call of Duty is coming out.
I mean, we all knew it was coming, and I feel like every year it's April or May. It's this is the name of it. Get ready. I mean, let's be honest. This isn't going away anytime soon because I think Advanced Warfare sold ridiculous numbers. Ghosts, which I know is kind of considered to be one of the lower points, sold a ton of copies. So this isn't going anywhere anytime soon. But
I actually really do want to play Advanced Warfare. That was like the first time I was actually super excited or super interested, but that was the first time I was like, hey, this looks kind of neat. Because it wasn't like a modern warfare game. I was like, oh, this is like Crisis or something. I don't know. This looks cool.
It sounds like they tried to be creative with this one.
Yeah, so who knows what they're doing? Yeah, and from what I've heard, Black Ops, like the Black Ops series of Call of Duty, is one of the more like not different Call of Duty games. Like I think Black Ops, like the first one, is supposed to be this is going to be like a more M-rated Call of Duty, and then Black Ops 2 was like, well, Advanced Warfare. And so I don't know what this one's going to be kind of awkward because the second one was set in the future, and now the series is in the future. So I don't know if Black Ops is going to be like more in the future than it's already in. I don't know.
Is Black Ops connected to Modern Warfare? Are those like? Is there one Call of Duty timeline, or are there like two separate Call of Duty timelines where you've got like the Modern Warfare timeline, then you've got the Black Ops timeline, and I would assume Advanced Warfare would fit in with Modern Warfare. But
we'll just have to wait. We'll have to wait for Nintendo to come out with the official Call of Duty timeline. And then we can sit there and argue that there's actually 3 separate timelines because when Colonel...
I
don't know either names. Colonel Stash Face.
There was one guy who was in one.
The guy with the mustache. He was actually in all the games. I thought that was kind of cool.
Price was one of them. One guy's name was Price.
Maybe Price. we know nothing about Call of Duty, man.
I played Modern Warfare 2 like 8 years ago. Anyway. All right, so moral of the story: Black Ops 3 is happening, whether we want it or not.
I don't know. Okay, I will say, final thought on this. Advanced Warfare surprised me enough that it got me interested in Call of Duty. Maybe Black Ops 3 will do the same.
There you go. I think that's a good way to put it. Last thing that came out, and this was another trailer announced game, is a new Dissidia Final Fantasy. So a new trailer came out. So these are kind of odd-looking games for a lot of reasons. I've never personally played these before. Have you?
I have. A little bit. Very little bit. It's a Final Fantasy fighting game. Kind of. This is one of the things I don't like about Final Fantasy spin-offs, is that I feel that they feel a little bit too attached to Final Fantasy gameplay rather than just Final Fantasy world. Because if this was just a straight up fighting game, like, that would be great. But this game, from what the original ones, Dissidia, had this really weird system where you had a health bar, and you also had something called like oh god, I should look this up before I start this. Like a might bar or something like that. And you couldn't actually do damage until you broke their will or something like that. Basically, it's like a normal fighting game, but they add this extra layer of confusingness. And
and
just
watching the trailer for the new one, it looks like they added about 8 layers of confusingness.
Yeah. Okay, so basically, it was what I wanted fighting game with these mechanics, and this just looks like it's a 3-on-3.
Yep.
And that's what it is. And but instead of just being like a PSP game or a PS4 game, it is a arcade game first that is developed by Team Ninja and Sony Japan, in conjunction with Square Enix, and then it's going to be released later for PS4. So hopefully that's not too confusing. So it's Dissidia 3-on-3 arcade game, then coming to PS4 after a year. I don't know why. I do know why they're waiting so long, because Japanese arcades are still a thing. But I know people in America be like, okay, when are we getting this? When's the rest of the world getting this? Because we don't have arcades. Nobody's going to buy a Dissidia arcade cabinet from Japan and ship it over to California.
Not a chance. Like the HUD for this is one of the things that is ridiculous to me. So again, I've never played this, but if you look up an image, and maybe like in the YouTube video or something, we'll put an image of it here, but if you look at the HUD, you can't tell what's going on in this game. It just looks like menus and bars and numbers like crazy. Like, if you were to see a screenshot of this, you would not think, oh, it's a fighting game.
No. Okay, so like I was saying before, so every character has 2 bars. Like I was saying, you have like your might bar and your health bar. But when you play the game, they show all 6 people's health and might bars. And then when you're looking at a character, they also have their health and might bars. So if you're looking at 3 enemy characters, you're going to see their bars twice. So that's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. So you're going to see 12 bars for just the enemy characters. And you got 3 other bars for you and your teammates. And of course, you've got your buttons on there too. This game just looks like a mess when when you're actually playing it. From what I understand, this actually looks like this is like a pretty standard UI for certain 3-on-3 arcade games in Japan. So it doesn't look like to Japanese audiences, this doesn't look crazy. But I really hope that when this comes to America, they at least tone it down. It's really weird too, because Final Fantasy 15 Duskai, the menu in that looked really, really slick. Like, it was really, really minimal, not a lot going on, and I thought that was pretty nice. But yeah, this just looks crazy. The trailer, though, that doesn't show any of the bars or stuff is great.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, I like the idea of a Final Fantasy fighting game. I'm a big fighting game fan, so like, this is going to sound bad, but there was a Star Wars fighting game for the original PlayStation.
Wait, is that the Fighters of Terrace Khan or something like that?
Yes, it is.
Oh, God.
I loved that game. I played so much of that game, and it is bad, but I just like the idea of, like, okay, these characters from this universe are now in a fighting game, and it's not like Predator and MKX where it's just the one character. It's like the whole universe, and I can have Luke Skywalker fight Han Solo, or I can have, I don't know, Cloud fight Tifa or whoever you want to do. But
yeah, I thought like that to me is cool. Like, I do like if it was just like a straight, like, this is a Final Fantasy 3-on-3 fighting game, period. This is a 3-on-3 fighting game with this weird layer of gobbledygook that makes it confusing. Like, no, just have a straight up brawler. And this is by the guys who did, like, Team Ninja, who did that's the Ninja Gaiden guys and Dead or Alive, right?
Yep.
So, like, I don't know why they couldn't just, because this is like they're just calling it Dissidia instead of like a sequel to the other ones. Like, why not just start from kind of ground zero of whatever a Final Fantasy fighting game can be?
Mm-hmm.
They seem to be just taking these weird mechanics and putting in this one. I don't know, the trailer, that game looked amazing. I was surprised how good those character models looked. Like, this is one of those times when it looks like the like Final Fantasy 8 or not. We talked about this when we were talking about Final Fantasy 15, but it looks like the CG models from earlier Final Fantasy games.
Yeah.
And it just looks, oh my gosh, it looks glorious. And I thought the battlefields were really cool looking. One they showed off was like from Final Fantasy 1, which is just this large field with this castle in the background that looked really neat. But the other one they showed was Midgar from Final Fantasy 7, and like you fight in front of Shinra.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh man, that is awesome. So I think the idea of this game and the character models and everything and the arenas look great. I'm just really worried about the gameplay itself because it just looks so effing confusing. But again, like a lot of games can look really confusing on first glance.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, I gotta stop talking about Bloodborne. It's just permeating every thought I have right now.
You just needed to get one more thought of Bloodborne before we finish this episode off.
Yeah. Everybody should play Bloodborne. It's amazing. But anyway, Final Fantasy Dissidia looks kind of cool. I will definitely play it in the future. I don't know when this game's coming out, though. What is it? It's 2015 right now?
Mm-hmm.
So not at least till 2017 because they're going to want a year in arcades first.
Yep.
So I don't know when this is coming out.
And you've got to get it here, too. So, I mean,
oh, yeah, with translations. Although Square has been really, really good about any game any major release they've had, they've released it worldwide.
That's true, the last couple.
Yeah, like even that Final Fantasy Type O and that Dusk Sky whatever game was released at the same time in Japan, or within a day or two.
Yeah.
Of Japan and America. So yeah,
that's cool. I'm
kind of excited just because it's a Final Fantasy fighting game and like the things you said. Like it's just my favorite character. Well, I don't play a lot of Final Fantasy, so I don't know if it's my favorite characters. But
those 4 characters you recognize.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, but the thing is, like those games have such strong art direction that these are just cool looking characters in
They're
general.
instantly recognizable.
Yeah,
you're not gonna get confused like a fighting game roster where like you mentioned Dead or Alive, and it's like, is that Tina or is that? I'm trying to think of other Dead or Alive characters, but I can't.
I've never played Dead or Alive.
I've played most of them, but I can't think of any characters. Or Mortal Kombat, is that Scorpion or Sub-Zero or Reptile or Ghost? Oh wait, he's green, so that's got to be the. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's actually very specific, very, very unique character models.
And they're definitely interesting enough that if you hadn't played the games, it's still like a cool looking character. Kind of like if you're playing Smash, like you're definitely not going to know all the characters, but you're like, oh, that guy's kind of cool looking. I'll try playing as him for a bit.
Yep. All right, so that will wrap up this episode of the Darksliders podcast. Thank you all for listening. Of course, you can follow us on Twitter at Darksliders_pod. Subscribe on YouTube, listen on iTunes, wherever you happen to be listening to now. Future episodes will probably be there, so hopefully if you're listening, you know where to find it. But thanks for listening to this one, and we will see you again next week.